Hey everyone, welcome to Real Talk with Bridget. Today I'd like to continue talking about the Dobbs opinion that was written. Again, let me reaffirm that I am not a lawyer. I have no law school training. My area of expertise is in psychology. However, I have some issues and I've been reading up on the Constitution and comparing um, and just looking up some of these issues around it. So let's get into it. So this is all about reproductive freedom in this case, and it's basically the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And here it's talking about how the Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and basically there were no rights that were implicitly covered. Well, technically, they are correct. However, so here we have the 14th Amendment, and it talks about how no state should deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. And I've put below it exactly the impact of forcing a woman into pregnancy, right? So you can deprive them life. So this could be a very necessary medical procedure that's not available, and it could result in death, especially if it's at later stages of the pregnancy. Liberty, a woman's not free to do as she wishes, and property, basically, if with the cost of child rearing, pregnancy, etc., a woman on her own, or even a family that's been struggling, wouldn't be able to afford any property or basically be able to leave anything to their descendants. Um, and this is a bit troubling because it talks a lot of the opinion was based in Constitution and where things were when the Constitution was passed. However, this is now talking about modern developments, right? And about the attitudes about pregnancy and unmarried women have changed drastically. But why does that make a difference? And those opinions are still there. It's like saying, how basically the Supreme Court, 2013, got rid of the voting rights. Basically, they gutted the Voting Rights Act, saying basically, like, what? Racism isn't around anymore. Sexism still exists, and even if you're going to look down on people that are unlike you or have had a pregnancy outside of wedlock, right? There's still scandal around that. Um, but why would the attitude around that? So what I'm trying to say is, why does the attitude around pregnancy matter now in this point in history when he's quoting cases around the 13th century and the 1700s when women were property? Why don't those attitudes around pregnancy matter for then, right? It's a question I have, and it does, for me, it doesn't follow logical sense. Um, and then basically like that there are laws that ban discrimination. Well, what's to say that they're not going to get overturned? And just because there are laws that ban discrimination doesn't mean that people still don't discriminate. It exists. Like people are going to be less likely to hire a woman who is basically in that area of reproduction, right? I know people who have blatantly said that they are less likely to hire someone if it looks like she could get pregnant anytime soon, because nobody wants to hire someone, pay for their maternity leave, and then have to onboard somebody else and pay for that staff person, right, to fill in. So again, it doesn't it doesn't quite gel, right? So people can still discriminate even though legally they're not supposed to. It happens. I mean, people kill each other even though legally they're not supposed to. And the cost of medical care. But so medical care back in the day, talking 1700s, you know, you could trade with the midwife or whatever, right? Or if it was a good friend of yours, they would just take care of you. And, maybe if you had a good harvest, you might kick them a few apples or something, right? Um, but medical care is so expensive and not everyone has insurance. And there is no health care for all, and none of that's been passed in the United States, which doesn't make sense. So if you're going to say that it's not expensive to be pregnant and to deliver a baby, well, it could cost, for an easy pregnancy, for an easy delivery, sorry, it could cost 15 grand. But we're not even looking at all the stuff that goes into the pregnancy period, right? So you're not even looking at the time off from work, the prenatal vitamins, the clothing you might need, all of the doctor's appointments, the time off from work, whether or not you can still physically do your job or not, or whether or not you need to look for a new job, whether or not you might lose your job because you're unable to perform as well as you used to. If you need time off, loss of salary, there's a lot of things that aren't covered, but they're also not acknowledging, right? And it's the cost of medical care, but that, it's bigger than that, right? And then you have safe haven laws, which if a person is privileged enough to be able to carry a baby to term and adoption is an option for them and they want that, then they can do that, right? But the fact is that our foster care system and the adoption system is so overwhelmed, along with teaching and schools. They're so overwhelmed that there isn't enough money in these institutions, nor is there enough people to actually fulfill the job roles and basically be able to perform to a level that's needed, that now you're going to put more stress on an already broken system and it's going to further crumble, right? And there's just a lot of problems here, because back in the day there were the same things. Like, you could basically leave a child at a center for foundlings, or if you didn't want it but you still had to give birth to it, you would leave it out to the elements, and it would die. But it's to say adoption is possible and to say that it's legal. I mean, this doesn't actually address the real concerns, and that is, why shouldn't a woman have a choice as to whether she wants to go this route or this route? So, you can have these centers and have facilities that help women to be able to afford to be pregnant and support them. You can also have areas of where they can go and they can get any care, and they could also get any treatments, and to have an abortion, because the world isn't a one size fits all. And there's such nuances. We need to acknowledge the nuances, and not everybody's going to make the same decision. So here on page 35, he talks about how the Constitution was supposed to endure through a long lapse of ages, right? It's supposed to be enduring. We're supposed to love the Constitution. However, the most amount of amendments were done shortly after the Constitution was drafted, right? So we have the Bill of Rights, which were drafted readily, right? So I think there was 10 drafted and accepted in 1791, another one in 1795, a bunch in 1800s. And then as we enter the 1900s, it's very few. And those are mainly around prohibition. I mean, it seems like all of the draftings are reactionary to what's happened, right? So the Bill of Rights is very reactionary to the revolution and what happened, right? Especially about a soldier being able to quarter in your home. Don't really have a need for that anymore, because, there's no soldiers demanding, staying in our homes, right? There's no civil wars. Yeah. Um, but you it's difficult to pass, but why is it difficult to amend? Why is it difficult to pass? Is it because so many people have figured out how to work the system with how it currently is? Because there are quite a few amendments that should be happening, and should be added to it, like the ERA. There should be additional amendments such as oversight. There should be amendments about DC statehood, whether or not any of the territories want to be representative, if they want to be states or not. Like, give them the choice, you know? So there's a lot of things that need to be updated, along with even the Native Americans. Like, they should be drafted into the Constitution, instead of being, basically said that they're not allowed to vote. Um, so I feel like there's a lot that we could do to make it better. But just saying it's hard to amend and that they're the ones responsible for fixing it, it feels weak, and it feels like they've kind of not understood the point of it. So what do you think? Do you think he's right? Do you think that maybe we should allow, or maybe, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should take into consideration the history of now. Maybe, maybe the history of when everything was passed doesn't matter. Um, Maybe the Constitution should be easier to amend. Who knows? But let me know what you think down below. Hit the subscribe if you like this content, and hit the bell for notifications. And if you have an opinion and you want to come on and speak about it, hit me up. Let me know, and I'll have you on board. All right. Have a great day, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. Bye.